Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive. And this one's got to be exciting for all of our Vintage Car Chronicles fans listening on Spotify, Deezer's, Apple Music, and YouTube.
Absolutely.
Because today we are diving into the world of Saleen Automotive, an American manufacturer of high-performance
Specialty.
specialty sports cars and parts.
Yeah, I'm really excited to unpack this one. Saleen's got such a rich history.
Yeah.
It's intertwined with American car culture, and they have such a dedication to pushing the limits of performance.
Yeah, we've got a great mix of sources to pull from for this one. Company history, we've got model specs, racing achievements, even some personal anecdotes about Steve Saleen, the man behind it all.
Oh, wow.
So really, what makes Saleen stand out in this very crowded world of high-performance vehicles? That's what we're here to uncover today.
Yeah, and what's so fascinating about Saleen is that they started with a very hands-on approach, deeply rooted in a passion for speed and racing.
Mm.
Steve Saleen himself was a professional race car driver, so that experience really shaped the company's DNA from the very beginning.
Yeah, I was reading about how he started modifying his own Porsche back in 1968. Like he had this innate need to make cars go faster and handle better, and that led him to found Saleen Autosport in 1983. Talk about humble beginnings, right?
Truly, it wasn't just a hobby for him, it was a vision. He saw a gap in the market for high-performance vehicles that were accessible to enthusiasts who weren't, professional racers. And he set out to fill that gap with cars that were engineered for both the street and the track.
And it all began with the Ford Mustang. So the first Saleen Mustang in 1985, it wasn't about flashy engine swaps. It was about optimizing the existing platform.
Right.
So they focused on brake suspension and chassis modifications to create a true performance machine.
That's a crucial point. It demonstrates their deep understanding of vehicle dynamics. They weren't just adding horsepower, they were creating a balanced, finely tuned package that could handle the added power and deliver, a truly exhilarating driving experience.
Makes you wonder what it would have been like to drive one of those early Saleen Mustangs. Did they gain a following immediately, or was it more gradual?
Well, from what I've gathered, their reputation grew steadily. It was fueled by word of mouth, among enthusiasts and their success on the racetrack.
Okay, let's talk about that racing heritage, because
Uh,
that seems to be a cornerstone of Saleen's identity.
Absolutely. They took their modified Mustangs racing in 1984, the same year the company was founded.
Wow.
And it wasn't just about marketing, it was about proving their engineering and showcasing what their cars could do. And that dedication to motorsports is woven into everything they do.
So they weren't afraid to put their creations to the test, to go head-to-head with some of those established names in racing.
Not at all. And it paid off. Their early success on the track legitimized their approach, and they attracted a loyal following of performance-minded drivers.
And eventually, they went from modifying Mustangs to becoming an OEM in 2005 with the S281. That must have been a huge milestone for the company.
It was. It was a statement of their ambition and their growth. Becoming an OEM means they were no longer just enhancing existing cars, they were designing and building their own vehicles from the ground up. The S281 reflected that shift, a Saleen Mustang that was more than just a modified Ford.
Yeah, I remember seeing those S281s on the road back then.
Yeah.
They definitely had a presence, a very distinct look that set them apart from the standard Mustangs.
Yeah, they had unique bodywork by Phil Frank, a name you might recognize from his work on other iconic vehicles. And of course, under the hood, you had a range of performance upgrades, including their signature superchargers, which we'll dive into later.
Okay, now that's definitely piqued my curiosity.
Mm.
But before we get into the specifics of the S281 and those superchargers, let's touch on some other iconic Saleen models, because I know our Vintage Car Chronicles listeners love to hear about these rare and special cars.
I think we have to talk about the SA-10, which they created to celebrate Saleen's 10th anniversary.
Now, that's a car you don't see every day. From what I've read, only 8 of those are believed to exist, right?
That's right, making it incredibly rare and highly sought after by collectors. It embodies everything Saleen stood for at that point. Striking design, powerful performance, and that limited edition exclusivity. It was a celebration of their journey.
And then there's the S302 Black Label, which came later. Now, that's a car that screams power, doesn't it?
It does. With 800 horsepower under the hood, the S302 Black Label was a beast on the road. It represented Saleen's continuous push for more power, better performance, and that thrilling driving experience they're known for.
And their naming conventions are interesting, too. The S281, the S302. They seem to use those numbers for a reason, right?
Yeah, those numbers are more than just names. They're a language that car enthusiasts understand. The S281, for example, refers to the 281 cubic inch displacement of the engine.
Uh-huh.
It's a way to instantly communicate the power plant under the hood.
It's like a secret handshake for car lovers. Like that. But there's one Saleen model that we absolutely have to talk about, and it's not a Mustang. It's the S7. This was a whole different animal for Saleen, their most ambitious project at the time.
The S7 was a game changer. It was their first wholly proprietary car, a mid-engine design unlike anything they'd done before. It was a statement that Saleen could not only modify existing cars, but create something truly unique and groundbreaking.
From the pictures I've seen, it looks like something out of a futuristic racing movie. Can you talk about what made the S7 so special? What were they trying to achieve with this car?
The S7 was designed to be a world-class supercar. It wasn't just about straight line speed. It was about handling aerodynamics and pushing the boundaries of what was possible in terms of performance and design.
It's amazing to think that Saleen, a company that started by modifying Mustangs in a small shop, could create a car like the S7. It must have taken a lot of vision and determination.
It did. And the S7 wasn't just a design exercise. It was built to compete with the best supercars in the world. They poured their racing experience and engineering expertise into this car.
And it even had a racing version, the S7R, right?
Yeah.
Did they take that car to the track and go up against the big names in motorsports?
They did. And they achieved some remarkable victories, proving that the S7 wasn't just a showpiece, but a true contender on the racetrack.
So they went from tuning Mustangs to creating a supercar that could rival the likes of Ferrari and Lamborghini. That's quite a journey.
It is, and it's a testament to Saleen's commitment to pushing the limits of automotive performance and their unwavering passion for speed and innovation. The S7's racing success really put Saleen on the map. But, let's not forget their roots. They continue to evolve their Mustang offerings, and those Saleen Mustangs became highly sought after by enthusiasts.
Okay, let's dive back into the Saleen Mustang world, because I know that's what a lot of our Vintage Car Chronicles listeners are passionate about.
Yeah.
We were talking about the S281 earlier. Can you kind of break down what made those cars so special?
Well, for starters, Saleen didn't just offer one version of the S281. They had a whole range of models, each with its own personality and performance level.
That's interesting. So it wasn't a one-size-fits-all approach. They were catering to different types of Mustang enthusiasts.
Exactly. They had models like the S281 3D, which was their base model, but even that car came with significant upgrades over a standard Mustang GT. Then you had models like the S281 Supercharged, which, as the name suggests, added a Saleen supercharger to the mix, boosting the horsepower significantly.
Those superchargers seem to be a recurring theme with Saleen. Can you explain what a supercharger does for those who might not be familiar?
Sure, a supercharger is essentially an air pump that forces more air into the engine. More air means more fuel can be burned, resulting in a significant increase in horsepower and torque. It's a way to get a lot more performance out of an engine without having to increase its size.
So it's like giving the engine a bigger lung capacity, allowing it to breathe deeper and produce more power. That makes sense. But didn't Saleen develop their own superchargers? I remember reading something about that.
You're right. They weren't content with just using off-the-shelf superchargers. They wanted to create systems that were specifically engineered for their vehicles. They even had different series of superchargers, each with its own unique design and performance characteristics.
Can you give me an example of one of those superchargers that really showcases Saleen's engineering?
Take the Series 6 supercharger, for example. This was a completely in-house design, a testament to their commitment to innovation. It wasn't just about adding boost, it was about optimizing the entire system for maximum efficiency and power delivery. It's the kind of detail that sets Saleen apart.
So for our Vintage Car Chronicles listeners, imagine owning a Saleen Mustang equipped with one of these superchargers. The sound, the acceleration, the feeling of power at your fingertips, it must be an incredible experience.
It's not just about raw power, though. Saleen paid attention to other aspects of the driving experience as well. They were known for their upgraded suspension components, brake systems designed for high-performance driving, and even details like their HID headlamps, which were some of the first OEM-grade street-legal HID headlamps available for Mustangs back in the early 2000s.
Okay, for those who might not be familiar, what does OEM grade mean, and why were HID headlamps such a big deal?
OEM stands for Original Equipment Manufacturer. So OEM grade means that the parts meet the same standards as the parts that come from the car manufacturer itself. HID headlamps, or high-intensity discharge headlamps, were a significant upgrade over traditional halogen headlights. They provided a much brighter, whiter light, improving visibility and safety at night.
So it wasn't just about going fast. It was about making the car better in every way. More power, better handling, and even improved visibility. They were really thinking about the whole package.
And they even introduced some innovative features that enhance the driving experience in other ways. For example, they developed the Saleen Scenic Roof, a full glass panel that replaced the traditional Mustang coupe roof. It was like having a giant sunroof, letting in a ton of natural light and giving the car a more open feel.
That sounds amazing, cruising down the road with the wind in your hair and the sun shining through that glass roof. I bet that was a popular option.
It was, and they even offered a version called the Frost Touch Scenic Roof, which allowed you to change the opacity of the glass with the flick of a switch. You could go from clear to frosted glass, instantly controlling the amount of light and privacy you wanted.
It's those little details, those innovations that really set Saleen apart. They weren't just content with building fast cars. They wanted to create cars that were special, that had those unique features that you wouldn't find anywhere else.
And that attention to detail extended to the aesthetics as well. Saleen developed their own line of Color Lab automotive paints. They weren't satisfied with the standard color palettes offered by Ford. They wanted to create something unique, something that would make their cars stand out even more.
Do they come up with any really iconic colors? I'm always fascinated by how car colors could become associated with certain brands or models.
One color that stands out is Mystic. It was a chameleon-like paint that shifted colors depending on how the light hit it. It could look green, purple, blue, even gold, all in the same car. It was a real head-turner.
That's incredible. It's like they were blending art with automotive design.
They worked closely with BASF, a leading paint technology company, to develop these unique colors and finishes. It was another example of their commitment to pushing boundaries and creating something truly special.
Okay, we've talked a lot about Saleen's focus on performance and innovation, but let's go back to their racing heritage for a moment. We touched on their early success with modified Mustangs, but they also achieved some remarkable victories with the S7R, the racing version of their supercar.
The S7R was a force to be reckoned with on the racetrack. It competed in some of the most prestigious sports car racing series in the world, including the American Le Mans Series and the FIA GT Championship.
And it went up against some legendary cars, right? Cars from Ferrari, Porsche, Corvette, some of the biggest names in motorsports.
It did, and it didn't just compete, it won. One of the most memorable victories was at the 2004 FIA GT Championship race at Imola, Italy. The S7R beat out some of the best GT cars in the world on their home turf. It was a David versus Goliath story that solidified Saleen's place in motorsports history.
I bet that victory was a sweet one for Saleen. It must have been incredibly satisfying to prove that their car could not only hold its own against the established players, but actually beat them.
It was a testament to their engineering, their dedication, and their unwavering belief in their ability to create a world-class racing machine.
But it wasn't just a one-off victory, right? They had a consistent track record of success with the S7R.
They did. They won races and championships in various series, consistently proving that the S7R was a formidable competitor.
For our Vintage Car Chronicles listeners, I think it's important to understand that this racing heritage is more than just bragging rights for Saleen. It's about proving their concepts, testing their technology in the most demanding environment possible, and then taking what they learn on the track and applying it to the cars they build for the street.
It's a feedback loop that benefits both their racing program and their road cars. The innovations and lessons learned on the track trickle down to the cars that enthusiasts can drive every day.
And it's not just about Mustangs and supercars. Saleen has branched out into other vehicle types as well. They've even ventured into the world of trucks, right?
They have. They created the Saleen Sport Truck based on the Ford F-150. It's a high-performance truck that combines Saleen's signature styling and performance upgrades with the rugged capability of the F-150 platform.
So they're taking that Saleen magic and applying it to a completely different type of vehicle. That's interesting. And they've also explored electric vehicles, haven't they? I remember reading something about the 416.
You're right. The 416 was Saleen's take on the Tesla Model S. They took an already impressive electric car and added their own touches, enhancing its performance, handling, and styling.
It seems like Saleen is always looking for new challenges, new ways to push the boundaries of automotive technology and design.
They're not content with resting on their laurels. They're constantly exploring new ideas, experimenting with new technologies, and finding ways to make their cars even better.
I'm curious to see what they come up with next. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's wrap up our discussion of their current lineup and then take a look back at some of the key innovations that have defined Saleen over the years.
That sounds like a good plan. We've covered a lot of ground, but there are still some fascinating details we haven't touched on yet.
Okay, so we spent a lot of time talking about, Saleen's high-performance cars, their racing heritage, and their constant drive for innovation. But for our Vintage Car Chronicles listeners, I think it's worth circling back to one model that really embodies what Saleen is all about, the S281.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The S281 represents a pivotal moment in Saleen's history because it really marked their transition from a company that primarily modified existing cars to a full-fledged OEM, original equipment manufacturer.
Right.
This means they were now designing and building complete cars, not just adding performance parts.
So the S281 was more than just a tuned-up Mustang. It was a statement that Saleen was ready to take on the big automakers on their own terms.
Exactly, and they didn't hold back. The S281 featured unique bodywork designed by Phil Frank,
Wow.
a renowned automotive designer. It had a distinctive look that set it apart from any other Mustang on the road. And it came with a range of performance upgrades that showcased Saleen's engineering expertise.
Yeah, I can just imagine seeing one of those S281s on the road back then. It must have been a real head-turner.
Oh, it was. And they offered a variety of models to appeal to different tastes and budgets.
Right.
You had the S281 3D, which was their base model, but even that car came with significant upgrades over a stock Mustang GT. Then there were the supercharged models, like the S281 Supercharged, and the even more extreme S281 Extreme, or as some people call it, the S281E.
Let's talk about that S281E for a moment. What made that model so special?
The S281E was really the ultimate expression of the S281 platform. It featured a Saleen-built engine that actually replaced the stock Ford engine.
Wow.
This wasn't just a matter of bolting on a supercharger, they were building their own high-performance engines. And they didn't stop there. The S281E also had a distinctive rear fascia with a center exhaust, a large rear spoiler, those iconic Saleen logos replacing the standard Ford Mustang badges.
It sounds like they were really going for it with the S281E, pushing the limits of performance and style. That must be a highly sought-after car among collectors today.
No, it is. The S281E really represents a golden era for Saleen, a time when they were establishing themselves as a force to be reckoned with in the world of high-performance cars.
But they didn't forget about enthusiasts who might not have been able to afford the top-of-the-line models. They also offered the S281 Red Flag and American Flag editions, right?
Yes, those were more accessible versions of the S281, but they still offered a significant performance upgrade over a standard Mustang.
Right.
And they had those patriotic paint schemes that really stood out.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of those. They're really striking, especially the American Flag edition with its red, white, and blue decals. It's a great example of how Saleen could appeal to a wider audience while still staying true to their performance roots.
Yeah, it's also a reminder that Saleen is an American company, and they've always been proud of their heritage. They've built their reputation on American ingenuity and a passion for pushing the limits of automotive performance.
And that brings us to another car that showcases their American spirit and their drive for innovation, the Saleen 1, also known as the S1. This is a car that's designed to compete with the best sports cars in the world.
The Saleen 1 is a testament to their engineering prowess. It's a mid-engine sports car with a carbon fiber body weighing in at a mere 2,700 pounds.
Wow.
That's incredibly light for a car with this level of performance.
And it's got the power to match, right?
Absolutely. It's powered by a 450 horsepower turbocharged engine that can propel it from 0 to 60 in just 3.5 seconds.
Wow.
And to showcase its capabilities, Saleen even launched a racing series called the Saleen Cup, giving aspiring racers a chance to experience the thrill of driving a Saleen on the track.
So they're not just building fast cars, they're building a community around those cars.
Yeah.
Giving enthusiasts a chance to share their passion for performance driving.
That's a big part of what makes Saleen special. They're not just a car company, they're a community of people who love cars, love speed, and love pushing the limits of what's possible.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of Saleen Automotive, what are some of the key takeaways for our Vintage Car Chronicles listeners?
I think the biggest takeaway is that Saleen is a company that's built on passion, innovation, and a relentless pursuit of performance. They're not afraid to challenge conventions, push boundaries, and create cars that are as unique as they are exhilarating to drive.
They've gone from modifying Mustangs in a small shop to building supercars that can rival the best in the world. And through it all, they've stayed true to their core values: performance, innovation, and a touch of that rebellious spirit that makes American muscle cars so captivating.
It's been an absolute pleasure diving deep into the world of Saleen with you today.
Likewise.
And I hope our Vintage Car Chronicles listeners have enjoyed the journey as much as we have.
Absolutely. And for all you Vintage Car Chronicles fans out there, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Don't forget to tune in tomorrow for another exciting episode. We release a new episode every day, so there's always something new to discover in the world of vintage cars.
Until then, keep those engines revving.